As best as anyone can tell, the seeds that would eventually become Soundgarden were sown in 1981 when Thayil and Hiro Yamamoto, who would serve as the band's bassist until 1988, living in Park Forest, Illinois, and having kicked around in local bands for a few years, graduated from Rich East and Alternative High School. Wanting to continue their educations in a similar manner, the two set out for Olympia, Washington, planning to enroll at the progressive Evergreen State College, unable to find jobs once they got to Olympia, and admiring the crop of bands that had sprung up in Seattle, where Thayil had lived until the age of 5, they moved there instead. Thayil enrolled at the University of Washington, where he eventually earned a degree in philosophy. Probably the earliest incarnation of Soundgarden was a short-lived cover band called the Shemps, which was founded by Thayil's roommate, a guitarist named Matt Dentino. Chris Cornell, then 19, had started out as a drummer, but he wanted more musical input than drummers were typically allowed. "I always figured I would just end up being such a good drummer that the best band in the world would ask me to be in it," says Cornell. "I guess I lost that attitude pretty quick, deciding to try singing," Cornell answered. Dentino's vocalist wanted add. When Cornell joined the Shemps, Yamamoto was playing bass. He subsequently quit and was replaced by Thayil. Cornell and Thayil often crossed paths with Matt Cameron and Ben Shepherd around this time. Cameron was drumming in a band called Feedback, which would eventually evolve into Skin Yard, and Shepherd was the guitarist for a local hardcore outfit called March of Crimes. That band's biggest claim to fame, says Shepherd, was a tape that sold a few copies in Finland. By 1984 the Shemps were history, and Cornell, looking to get away from a flaky roommate, had moved in with Yamamoto. "I was a drummer, and he was a bass player," says Cornell, "so it was sort of like the law that we had to start a band." After jamming around with a number of guitarists, the two invited Thayil into the fold, christening themselves Soundgarden after a pipe sculpture in Seattle's Sandpoint that makes unearthly howling noises in the wind. The trio began gigging, Cornell doubling on drums and vocals, and the band's first show was with a New York band called Three Teens Kill. For its second was with the Melvins and Husker Du. After enlisting drummer Scott Sundquist to free Cornell up for frontman duties, the band gigged around for a year, and in 1986 they began recording, contributing 2 songs, Heretic and All Your Lies, to a CZ Records compilation album called Deep Six, which also featured the Melvins, the U-Men, Skin Yard, Malfunction, and Green River. By most accounts, it was Deep Six that sent the first brigade of major label A&R reps to Seattle in the 80s. In light of this, it was reissued in 1994 with the collaborative effort of CZ and A&M Records. Sundquist, who had a wife and kids and bowed out of Soundgarden the same year, after some prodding, Cornell, Thayil and Yamamoto lured Cameron away from Skin Yard, and the four began recording their first sub-pop EP, 1987's Screaming Life. It was released as a 12-inch with the first 600 copies on orange vinyl. Sub Pop also released a promotional single in support of the most valuable records on the label. They followed up in 1988 with a second EP, Fop, built around droning funk, metal and dub versions of the Ohio Players song. The EP foreshadowed Soundgarden's bent for offbeat covers. Both EPs were later reissued together on one CD, 1990's aptly titled Screaming Life, Fop, on Sub Pop. By this time A&M Records had come a-courting, but the band members chose to stay on the indie circuit and sign with SST, home of the post-punk bands they idolized, to record their first full-length LP, 1988's Grammy-nominated Ultra Mega OK, which featured a cover of John Lennon's 1 Minute of Silence. A&M's persistence eventually won out, though, and the label signed them later that year. Soundgarden began work on its A&M debut, Louder Than Love, in December of 1988. Just after the album's release in the fall of 1989, Yamamoto wanted to return to school and left the band. Left in a lurch with a tour already booked, Soundgarden began auditioning bass players. Ben Shepherd was among those who showed up, but though the band liked his style, he didn't know the songs. Jason Everman, who did know them, got the gig. The A&M album led to tours across the States and Europe, including a successful tour package with Voivod and Faith No More. An earlier show was filmed for a home video, which was released as Louder Than Live. The videotape displayed the band's Vengeance in concert and featured a medley consisting of Spinal Tap's Big Bottom and Cheech and Chang's Rake My Eye. A&M also released a promotional CD called Louder Than Live with a few other songs not on the video, but after the tour, Everman was history. It was right around this time that Mother Love Bone singer Andy Wood, who had been friends with the members of Soundgarden and a one-time roommate of Cornell's, died of an overdose. As their first musical effort together, the band decided to release a single on Sub Pop as a gift room 8,000 Years Wide. It was released as a freebie for members of Sub Pop's Single of the Month Club in a pressing of 5,000 copies, with the first 1,500 on great vinyl. Not surprisingly, the record sold quickly and gave a good indication of what the band had in store for the future. In a tribute to Andy Wood, Chris penned a few songs and asked Pearl Jam guitarist Stone Gossard to collaborate. Along with Stone, Chris asked fellow Soundgardener Matt Cameron, as well as Jeff Ament, Mike McCready and Eddie Vedder to lend their music. This was Temple of the Dog. An album was recorded from that material and released in April 1991 on A&M Records. In addition to his contribution to Temple of the Dog, Matt Cameron could also be found playing drums on an album called Ankylode by the Tone Dogs, a group featuring avant-garde jazz saxophonist Amy Dentino. In the spring of 1991, the band worked on its next album with producer Terry Date. Bad Motor Finger was released in the latter half of the year. The album featured a different version of Room 1,000 Years Wide, and it exposed the band to an even wider audience. Its success was proven when Bad Motor Finger rewarded the band with their first platinum album, commemorating the sale of 1 million copies. In addition to the album tracks, Soundgarden recorded a number of songs from the Bad Motor Finger sessions that were meant for non-LP tracks or future reference, including several cover tunes. One of these, She's a Politician, can be found as a split flexi disc with Rights of the Accused in the December 1991 issue of Reflex. In short, on May 1996, Soundgarden released Down on the Upside, their most recent studio album, which debuted at 2 on the Billboard Top 200. To support the album, the band became the first act to ever play the main stage twice, as it joined Lollapalooza for its summer tour. Prior to the tour, Soundgarden played their first club gig in a long time, appearing at the Showbox in Seattle in front of an audience of only 800. Shortly after the band returned from Lollapalooza, the second single from Down on the Upside, Burden in My Hand, was released. The band then toured Europe in early fall 1996 and returned to the United States to play shows across the country. The US leg of the tour suffered due to problems with Chris Cornell's voice that led to the cancellation of 2 shows and the postponing of 2 more. After resting for the holidays, Soundgarden headed to Australia and New Zealand, followed by 2 shows in Hawaii on February 1997. The third single from Down on the Upside, released before the band toured the US, was Blow Up the Outside World, whose video caused controversy in Europe. It was even banned from MTV Europe for a few weeks. The tour over, the band announced it would be taking the summer off and then hopefully going back into the studio in the fall of 1997. Chris spoke enthusiastically about recording when interviewed before the Grammy Awards, for which Pretty Noose was nominated but did not win. Kim was featured on the new Pigeonhead record. In March, Ben Shepherd announced he would be playing with Devilhead as a side project. His first gig with that band was in Seattle on April 1997. On April 1997, Soundgarden stunned the music world by announcing that they were disbanding. As the press release stated, after 12 years, the members of Soundgarden have amicably and mutually decided to disband to pursue other interests. There is no word at this time on any of the members' future plans.